The cold wind howled across the icy plains of Varine 7, a distant moon on the edge of known space. Inside a small radar outpost built into a frozen cliff, an alien girl named Rhea sat alone in the control room. The metal walls creaked with every gust and frost covered the window like thin white skin. Her breath formed little clouds in the air as she watched the flickering green lines on her old radar screen. Rhea was young, barely 20 cycles old, but she already felt forgotten by her people. Her job was boring. Every night she watched empty skies for signals that never came. Her species, the Valorians, once ruled the nearby systems, but now they were tired, quiet, and afraid of stories. Especially one story, the myth of the humans. Her grandmother used to whisper those tales when she was a child. Humans were fire, she would say. They burned bright, too bright, and then they vanished. The council called them lies, old bedtime stories meant to scare children. But sometimes, when the wind howled outside and the stars looked too still, Rhea wondered if the myths were true. Tonight felt different. The storm outside had grown stronger, and static filled her comm headset. She adjusted the frequency, tapping the side of the old transmitter. Suddenly the radar made a soft ping, then another. Then 3 quick beeps in perfect rhythm. Her golden eyes widened. No, that can't be real, she zoomed in. The screen showed a faint moving dot, metallic, descending fast through the upper atmosphere. It wasn't Valorian. It wasn't any known ship code. Her pulse quickened. The object had Earth-type thrusters, engines not used in centuries. Her hands trembled as she tried to stabilize the image. Unidentified craft detected. Coordinates 237 by 91. Her voice shook as she recorded the log. Then through the heavy static, a sound broke in and a human voice. This is Captain Elias Ward, requesting landing clearance. The words came broken, full of interference, but she heard enough. Her heart nearly stopped. A human name. A human voice. She stared at the speaker in disbelief. Every muscle in her body froze. For a moment, even the storm outside went silent. Then the radio crackled again. I repeat, this is Captain Elias Ward, crew of the Odyssey, requesting emergency landing. Rhea's mind spun. The Odyssey. That name was listed in the old war archives, one of the human exploration ships lost 300 years ago. But how could it still exist? Her first instinct was to call command, but she hesitated. The council would not believe her. They would order her to erase the recording, maybe even arrest her for spreading forbidden myths. She knew what they had done to others who claimed to see human artifacts. They disappeared quietly, and no one spoke their names again. Her eyes moved to the window. The storm had opened for a moment, and she saw a faint orange light cutting through the snow clouds. A crash trail, descending toward the northern ice fields. Her hands shook as she grabbed her coat and datapad. She needed to see it herself. She needed proof. Before leaving, she looked once more at the old family photo on her desk. Her grandmother smiling softly, holding little Rhea. Humans are dangerous, her grandmother had warned. But never forget. They taught us what courage means. Maybe that was why Rhea couldn't ignore this. She opened the door and the icy wind slammed into her face like a wall. The air bit her skin, but her heart was burning with a strange excitement she hadn't felt in years. As she crossed the snowfield, lightning flashed above. In the distance, she saw it, a smoking trail leading down into a valley. Her boots sank deep into the snow as she hurried forward, her breath quick and fast. The radar beacon on her wrist kept pulsing, stronger with every step. Halfway across the plain, she stopped. The radio hissed again. Is anyone out there? Please respond. Oxygen failing. Rhea covered her mouth. The voice was weaker now, desperate. She could hear fear and then something else, humanity. She pressed the comm. This is Lieutenant Rhea of Varine Station. Identify yourself, Static answered first. Then the voice again, softer. Thank God. A response. This is Elias Ward, Captain Earthfleet. We're not alone after all. Rhea's knees almost gave way. Her breath caught in her throat. She whispered, It's real. It's all real. But before she could speak again, her radar went black. The screen on her wrist flickered, then died completely. Someone was jamming the signal. Someone knew she was listening. Fear replaced her excitement. The Council's security force must have detected the transmission. If they knew she had heard a human voice, they would come for her next. She ran faster, snow whipping against her face. The smoke trail grew larger ahead, and through the storm she finally saw the outline of a metallic shape buried in the ice. Massive, ancient, half-broken, and undeniably human. The wind screamed around her, and the last thing she heard through the dying radio was the faint heartbeat of a machine. Slow, rhythmic, alive. Rhea stood there, eyes wide, heart pounding. A forgotten ship, a dead myth, a living human, all buried in the snow before her. She whispered to the storm. Humans were never gone. They were just waiting to return. And far above, in the dark clouds, a second radar signal began to pulse, stronger, closer. Like an answer from the sky. The myth was real all along. The next morning, the twin suns of Varine 7 rose weakly behind the storm clouds. The frozen outpost shimmered in pale light as Rhea hurried back from the crash site. Her boots were heavy with ice and her fingers were numb, but her heart beat faster with every step. She had seen it. The human ship, Odyssey, half buried in the snow. The voice still echoed in her mind. We're not alone after all. By the time she reached the city gates, soldiers were already waiting. Their armor glowed with cold blue light and their eyes followed her every move. One of them stepped forward and scanned her wristband. Lieutenant Rhea of Varine Station, he said. By order of the High Council, you are to report immediately. Rhea tried to keep her face calm, but fear rippled beneath her skin. They knew. The council hall stood like a frozen mountain of glass and steel, its spires piercing the gray clouds. Inside, the air smelled of incense and ozone. The elders sat on raised thrones, their pale faces half hidden under hoods that shimmered faintly with holographic patterns. At the center sat General Vor, a tall figure with deep scars running down his cheek, marks from wars Rhea had only read about. His cold blue eyes studied her in silence. You reported a signal last night, Vor said finally. His voice was heavy, calm, but dangerous. Explain. Rhea stood straight, though her heart trembled. Yes, General. I detected an unidentified craft entering atmosphere. It matched ancient human engine patterns. Eyes at the room stirred. One of the elders laughed softly. Human engine patterns? Lieutenant, do you realize what you're saying? Humans are myths, tales from before recorded history. I know the stories, Rhea said, her voice small but firm. But I heard a voice, a man. He said he was Captain Elias Ward of Earthfleet. Enough, another elder snapped. Earthfleet never existed. You've been reading forbidden data. Rhea looked around. Every face showed disbelief, annoyance, and maybe a touch of fear. She turned to General Vor. Sir, I saw the ship. It's real. I can take you there. Vor leaned forward slowly. A ship in the snow does not prove a myth, Lieutenant. You're too young to understand the danger of false hope. It's not false, she protested. He's alive. Silence fell. Even the air seemed to freeze. Vor's expression darkened. Alive? Rhea realized she had said too much. A faint hum filled the hall as energy shields shimmered to life around the council. One of the elders pressed a glowing sigil on the table. Lock her quarters. Confiscate her station logs. We'll verify this signal ourselves. Rhea's stomach dropped. They weren't going to verify anything. They would erase it. Erase him. As guards escorted her out, she caught a glimpse of General Vor watching her. His face was unreadable, but there was something in his eyes, something like memory. That night, Rhea sat alone in her room, surrounded by silence. Her window looked out over the frozen city. Patrol drones glided through the mist like silver insects. Her datapad was gone. Her comms were cut off. But she had been smart. She had copied the coordinates. A small chip hidden inside her jacket contained everything. The radar logs, the frequency trace, even the voice recording. She played it again in secret. This is Captain Elias Ward, requesting emergency landing. The voice crackled soft but alive. She closed her eyes, letting it fill her. Suddenly, her door beeped. Someone was outside. Rhea's heart raced. She hid the chip under the metal floor grate and stepped back. The door slid open. A shadow filled the doorway. General Vor stepped inside alone. His armor glimmered faintly in the dim light. You shouldn't have come here, Rhea whispered. He said nothing for a moment, just looked around the room. Then he spoke quietly. You remind me of someone, Rhea frowned. Who? He smiled bitterly. A soldier who once believed humans were monsters. Until one saved his life, she froze. You met one? Vor didn't answer directly. I was a boy during the Great Collapse. The old war burned half the stars. Humans were fierce, yes, but not evil. Our leaders twisted the truth to keep control. They called it peace, but it was fear. Rhea stared at him, hardly breathing. Then you believe me. I believe you saw something, Vor said. But the Council will never admit it. They'd rather destroy a world than let the myth return. Her voice broke. He's still out there, General. Please help me reach him. Vor looked away. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he handed her a small device, a cloaking beacon. Take this. It will hide your signal for 6 hours. After that, you're on your own. Rhea took it with trembling hands. Why are you helping me? He sighed. Because I'm tired of living in a lie. Then he turned and left, his footsteps echoing down the hallway like fading thunder. Rhea waited until the corridor lights dimmed. Then she opened the floor grate, pulled out the chip, and activated the cloaking beacon. A soft shimmer wrapped around her like mist. She slipped out into the night. Outside, the storm had returned, wilder than before. The wind howled as if the planet itself wanted to stop her. But Rhea didn't care. The human's voice still echoed in her mind. Weak, desperate, alive. She would find him again. No matter what. Far above, hidden among the storm clouds, satellites turned and focused on her signal. Silent watchers obeying the Council's will. Rhea didn't see them. She only saw the horizon, the place where myth met truth, and somewhere out there, under layers of ice and time, a human heartbeat still pulsed. The Council could deny it all they wanted. But the signal was real, and so was he. The frozen wind bit at Rhea's face as she crossed the endless white plains of Varine 7. Her cloak fluttered like a dark shadow behind her, blending with the storm. Snowflakes hissed against her visor, and her oxygen meter blinked red. She had been walking for hours, following the faint coordinates stored in her wrist beacon, the same location the Council had ordered erased. Every step echoed in the silence. She knew this part of the moon was forbidden, marked as a dead zone after ancient battles. No one ever came here. The legends said machines still whispered under the ice, ghosts of the old war. But Rhea no longer believed in legends the same way she once did. Now she knew the truth. The myths were real. She climbed a ridge of black rock, gasping for air. When she reached the top, she froze. Below her, half buried in the ice, lay the ship. The Odyssey. It was enormous. A metallic beast, its hull cracked and scarred by centuries of frost. The human letters were faded but still visible, glowing faintly under a thin layer of ice. Rhea's eyes widened as she whispered the name. Odai, say. She slid down the slope carefully, her boots slipping on the glassy surface. The closer she came, the stronger the magnetic pulse from her beacon grew. The air hummed with static energy. The ship was still alive. At the base of the hull, a small access door stood half open, frozen in place. Rhea used her plasma cutter to melt the edges. With a low hiss, the door cracked open, revealing a corridor filled with darkness and silence. She stepped inside. The air smelled of rust and old dust. Her helmet light flickered over ancient panels and floating particles. Every sound echoed, her breath, her footsteps, the soft creak of metal under strain. Captain Elias Ward. She whispered, her voice trembling. If you can hear me, I'm here. Her translator made a soft chime, repeating her words in broken human language. No response. She moved deeper into the ship, scanning each room. Broken cryopods lined the walls, their glass cracked and frost-covered. Some were empty. Others still held motionless figures, bones wrapped in faded suits. She paused at one pod that still glowed faintly. Her scanner beeped. Vital signs, weak, human, alive. Rhea's heart skipped. She brushed the frost away and saw a man's face beneath the ice. Pale, calm, eyes closed as if dreaming. His uniform bore the same name she had heard on the radio, Captain Elias Ward. She activated the emergency revival system, but the pod's power was almost gone. Sparks flew. The lights flickered weakly. She pulled open a small control panel, trying to connect her own energy cell. The system resisted, then finally accepted the charge. The pod hissed. Steam filled the corridor. Rhea stepped back, her pulse pounding in her ears. Then, the man moved. His fingers twitched first, then his eyes fluttered open. They were a deep, tired blue. He stared at her through the haze of the pod, confused, frightened. His lips moved, but the words came out faint and cracked. "Who are you?" Her translator struggled to respond. "Rhea." "Friend." He blinked slowly, trying to understand. The pod opened with a heavy sound and warm vapor spilled into the cold air. Rhea helped him out. He was weak, shaking, barely able to stand. "Where am I?" he whispered. "You are on Vereen 7, she said softly. "Your ship crashed. A long time ago." Elias looked around, dazed. His gaze stopped on the frost-covered walls, the broken consoles, the alien symbols on her armor. "You're not human." "No," she said gently. "Valorian." He tensed, fear flickering in his eyes. "The war. Did we lose?" Rhea hesitated. "There is no war now. Only silence." He laughed weakly in a dry, bitter sound. "That means we lost." Rhea didn't answer. She helped him sit on a crate, wrapped her emergency cloak around him. His body trembled from cold and exhaustion. After a while, he spoke again, his voice barely above a whisper. "How long?" "Was I asleep?" She looked at the ship's time log. 306 years. Elias stared at her, stunned. "Everyone I knew, gone." His eyes filled with tears, but he quickly blinked them away. Rhea knelt beside him, unsure what to say. She wanted to comfort him, but words felt small in this moment. The only sound was the slow drip of melting ice. Then the ship's console flickered to life. Red lights flashed and an old human AI voice spoke weakly. "Warning. External scanners. Detecting Valorian military drones. Multiple contacts approaching." Rhea's eyes widened. The council had found her. Elias tried to stand but stumbled. She caught him, her voice urgent. "We must leave, now." He looked at her, confused. "Your people are still at war?" "They fear you," she said. "They always have." She helped him to the hatch, but the wind outside howled violently. Snow whirled in thick waves. Her cloak whipped in the storm as she pulled him into the open. In the distance, faint blue lights glowed, council patrol drones sweeping the horizon. Elias squinted at them. "Those things, they'll shoot us on sight, won't they?" Rhea nodded grimly. "Yes, but I won't let them." They struggled across the snow toward the nearby cliffs. Elias stumbled often, his breathing ragged. Rhea half carried him, her strength the only thing keeping them moving. Behind them, explosions echoed as drones fired at the wreck to destroy all evidence. The Odyssey, the last trace of human history, went up in flames. Elias turned to watch it, pain flashing in his eyes. "My ship." "I'm sorry," Rhea said softly, tightening her grip. "But you are what matters now." They reached a narrow cave at the cliff's base. Inside, the air was still and warm. She helped him lie down, her heart pounding. The ground trembled as the drones passed overhead, searching. Elias looked at her through tired eyes. "Why did you save me?" Rhea stared at the fire she had lit with her plasma torch. "Because I needed to know the truth," she said. "And now I do." Outside, the storm roared like a living thing, hiding them beneath its fury. Inside the cave, a human and an alien sat side by side, two survivors of different worlds, both hunted, both afraid, and yet somehow connected. The myth was no longer just a story. It had a heartbeat. The cave was small and hidden beneath layers of rock and ice. Outside, the storm still howled, but inside it was quiet, warm from the faint orange glow of Rhea's plasma torch. The smell of burnt metal mixed with the scent of snow melting off their clothes. Elias lay on a bed of old thermal sheets Rhea had spread out. His breathing was heavy but steady. Every now and then his eyes flickered open, confused, lost between two centuries. Rhea sat nearby, studying the human face that once existed only in stories. His features were softer than she imagined, less like a warrior, more like someone who carried too much sorrow. She had grown up hearing that humans were monsters, destroyers of worlds, but this man looked fragile, exhausted, and painfully alive. When he opened his eyes again, their gazes met. She smiled nervously and tried to speak through her translator. "You..." "Safe now," the device crackled and the words came out broken. "You... No safe." Elias frowned, clearly not understanding. He pointed at himself. "Elias," he said slowly. Then he pointed at her. Rhea hesitated, then nodded. "Rhea. Rhea," he repeated softly, his accent bending the sound. She felt a strange warmth hearing her name spoken in his voice. A voice that belonged to a myth. She tried to explain where they were. Using gestures, she drew shapes on the cave floor, circles for planets, a small one for Vereen 7, and a star symbol for the twin suns. Elias watched, then nodded slowly, realization dawning. Far, he whispered. Very far from Earth. She pointed to the stars outside the cave mouth. Earth, where? He picked up a small piece of stone and scratched a shape into the icy floor. A spiral, then a line of dots. Milky Way, he said. Home is gone. Rhea looked at the drawing for a long time. Her people had no word for home the way he said it, full of longing and loss. She felt a strange ache in her chest. After some silence, she handed him a small metal flask from her pack. Drink, warm. Elias took a careful sip. The alien liquid made him cough, but color returned to his cheeks. Not bad, he said with a weak smile. Rhea didn't understand the words, but his expression made her laugh softly. The sound echoed against the stone walls, gentle and human. Hours passed. Rhea repaired the portable heater using parts from her wrist console, while Elias rested. When he woke again, he looked stronger. His voice was hoarse but steady. What year is it? He asked, pointing to her wrist screen. She showed him the date. Cycle 743, he frowned. Cycle. She paused, trying to think of a simpler way. Years, many. Then she wrote the number 306 on the snow. Sleep, long time. He looked away, his jaw tightening. 3 centuries, he whispered. His hand trembled as he reached for his old flight badge, still pinned to his chest. Everything's gone. Rhea wanted to comfort him, but words failed. Instead, she placed her hand gently on his shoulder, a silent promise that he wasn't alone. Elias looked at her, eyes softening. You're not afraid of me? The translator caught some of it, repeating, You, not fear. Me? She smiled faintly. No, you, human. Not monster. He laughed, and a real laugh this time, though weak. Most people wouldn't agree with you. Rhea tilted her head, not understanding the words, but she recognized the tone. Sadness wrapped in humor. For the first time, she saw how human emotions felt so alive, so raw. Later, when night came again, Rhea stepped outside the cave. The storm had quieted. Above her, the twin moons glowed pale blue over the horizon. She looked back and saw Elias asleep beside the heater, his face peaceful. Her wrist console blinked red. An encrypted message. She hesitated, then opened it. Lieutenant Rhea, your presence has been detected near the northern ruins. Return immediately. By order of the Council. Her chest tightened, they knew. Somehow, even with the cloaking beacon, they had traced her energy trail. If she went back, Elias would die. If she stayed, she would become a traitor to her entire world. Inside, Elias stirred, sensing her unease. Something wrong? He asked quietly. She looked at him, hesitating. Then she drew 2 circles in the snow, one for her people, one for humans, and placed them far apart. She pointed to herself and him, then slowly moved the circles closer until they touched. Elias watched her in silence. Then he reached forward and placed his hand over hers. Together, he said. The translator whispered. Together. Something deep in Rhea's heart shifted. She realized she wasn't just protecting him. She was protecting the truth itself. The truth her world had buried under lies. She packed quickly, handing him a piece of dried ration. We move soon, he frowned, still weak. Go, where? She drew a symbol on the ice, a tall spire representing the old observatory, a derelict human structure from the war. Safe there, he nodded slowly. Lead the way, Rhea. As they stepped out into the cold again, the first light of dawn stretched across the horizon, painting the ice in gold and pink. Behind them, the cave stood silent, a small place where 2 lost souls had learned to speak without words. The world outside waited with danger and secrets, but Rhea felt something new rise inside her, a spark of hope. The human had taught her one thing already. Silence was only empty until someone gave it meaning, and together, they were about to give it voice. Snow stretched endlessly beneath a pale sky as Rhea and Elias moved across the frozen wasteland. The wind screamed around them, sharp and merciless, but neither slowed down. Their footprints disappeared behind them almost as soon as they were made, swallowed by the storm. Elias leaned heavily on a metal rod he'd taken from the wreck of his ship. His breathing was rough, and every few steps he stumbled, Rhea walked close beside him, supporting his weight when he faltered. "You okay?" she asked softly through her translator. He nodded, though his face was pale. "Still alive," Rhea smiled faintly. She didn't fully understand his words, but his voice carried strength. That was enough. Behind them, in the far distance, blue lights blinked through the haze, the unmistakable glow of Council patrol drones. They were following the same coordinates she had once sent to the Council, hunting the source of the forbidden signal. "We have to move faster," Rhea said under her breath. The translator crackled out, "Move." "Quick!" Elias glanced back at the lights and nodded grimly. "They're close, aren't they?" She didn't need to answer. The distant hum of engines was already growing louder. After hours of walking, they reached the edge of an old industrial valley, ruins of a war that had ended long before Rhea was born. Rusted towers leaned against the wind and broken machines slept beneath layers of snow. The air smelled faintly of oil and iron. "This place," Elias whispered. "It was human once." Rhea looked around, scanning the strange metallic carvings and shapes. "War here. Long time ago." He touched one of the old walls, brushing away frost to reveal a faded symbol, a circle with wings. "Earth Fleet emblem," he murmured. "My people built this." For a moment he just stood there, lost in memory. Then the silence was shattered by the distant sound of engines. The drones had found them. Rhea grabbed his hand. "Run!" They ran through the ruins as energy blasts lit up the snow behind them. The ground shook with explosions. Rhea's heart pounded, adrenaline rushing through her veins. She could feel the heat of plasma fire slicing past her shoulder. Elias tripped, falling hard against the snow. Rhea turned back instantly, firing her plasma pistol at the nearest drone. The shot struck true, exploding in a burst of blue light. She rushed to him. "Up!" he groaned, trying to stand. His leg was bleeding, a burn from a plasma hit. "Go," he said through clenched teeth. "Don't slow down for me." Rhea's eyes hardened. "No. Together." She pulled his arm over her shoulder, helping him limp through a gap between two fallen towers. They ducked into the shadows, panting. The sound of engines faded briefly as the drones searched the wrong direction. Elias looked at her, pain flashing in his eyes. "Why are you doing this?" Rhea turned to face him, snow clinging to her hair. "Because truth worth saving," he smiled weakly. "Truth worth dying for, too?" She hesitated. "Maybe." Same thing. Their eyes met. Two souls from different worlds, bound by a danger neither fully understood. As night fell, they found shelter in the remains of an old observatory dome, half collapsed but still standing. Inside, faded holographic charts hung in the air, flickering faintly. Maps of galaxies from before the war. Rhea activated her wrist light, casting a soft glow across the dusty consoles. Elias sat on the floor, clutching his injured leg. Rhea tore a strip from her cloak and wrapped it carefully around the wound. He winced but didn't pull away. "Thank you," he said softly. She didn't need the translator for that. She understood. When the wind outside calmed, Rhea explored the old machines. One terminal still hummed with power. After several tries, it flickered to life, projecting a star map, thousands of points of light filling the dome. Elias looked up, eyes wide. "That's..." The old navigation grid. "I remember this." He limped over and began pressing faded buttons using muscle memory older than time. The screen shifted, zooming in on a system marked with the human word, Haven. Rhea watched in awe. "What is Haven?" He smiled faintly, a mix of sadness and hope. "It was a refuge, our last colony before the fall. If it's still out there..." His voice trailed off. Rhea's mind raced. A living human colony. It could change everything. Proof that humanity survived. Proof the myths were true. But then the terminal beeped, flashing a red warning. "Incoming signal detected." She froze. "They find us." Elias cursed softly under his breath. The translator didn't bother repeating it. Through the broken dome, Rhea saw faint blue lights descending again. The drones had tracked their energy source. Elias reached for his weapon, but it was long dead. "We can't fight them all." Rhea clenched her jaw. "We not fight. We run." She pulled him toward the emergency hatch at the back of the dome. They crawled through the narrow passage as plasma blasts struck the walls above them. Sparks rained down, lighting the tunnel in flickering blue. At the end of the passage, Rhea activated her beacon. A small hover sled hidden beneath the snow whirred to life. She helped Elias onto it and climbed behind. "Hold tight," she said. He gripped the edge, and with a roar, the sled shot forward into the dark. Behind them, the observatory exploded, a fireball of light and dust. Elias looked back, eyes wide. "They'll never stop, will they?" Rhea shook her head. "No, they fear what you are." "And what's that?" She looked at him, her golden eyes glowing faintly in the cold night. "A reminder that myths never die." The sled raced across the frozen plain, the stars above reflecting in the ice like 1,000 eyes watching silently. Rhea didn't know where their path would lead, maybe to haven, maybe to death. But for the first time she felt something bigger than fear. Hope. The storm swallowed them again, hiding their trail from the machines behind. And somewhere deep in the wreckage of the past, the truth of two worlds began to awaken. The city of Varine Prime never slept. From above it looked like a web of glowing veins spread across the ice, towers of steel and light stretching into the storm clouds. But beneath that beauty lay silence, fear, and control. Rhea remembered it well. The strict voices of the council, the endless propaganda repeating through the airwaves. Humans are myths. Myths bring chaos. Myths must be forgotten. But now, far beyond those towers, she carried a truth that could burn through every lie. Elias sat beside her in the small hover shelter they had found after fleeing the observatory. His injured leg was wrapped tight and his face looked pale but determined. Outside, the faint hum of distant drones echoed, searching. Rhea stared at the faint red sky. "They will not stop," she said quietly. Elias nodded. "They never do. Fear feeds power." Her translator stuttered, catching fragments. "Fear gives power." She repeated it, thinking about the council, about how they had turned lies into law. She clenched her fists. Then, "We take power back." A few hours later they reached the lower ring, a district built beneath the city, where the young and poor lived in dim light and recycled air. Here the council's words didn't carry as far. Whispers ruled instead. Rhea moved through the narrow alleys, her hood pulled low. Elias walked carefully beside her, wrapped in an old cloak. The people here stared. His human shape was different, his skin pale, his movement strange, but they said nothing. Curiosity was dangerous, but it was also contagious. They reached a hidden chamber behind an abandoned power hub. Inside, a group of Valorian youths gathered around flickering lights. Their leader, Taran, stood up as Rhea entered. His eyes widened. "Lieutenant, you vanished. The council said you were dead." Rhea's voice was firm. "They lied," Taran frowned. "Then what's this about?" She took a deep breath and pressed a small holographic device on the table. A projection appeared. Elias's ship, the Odyssey, glowing blue in miniature. The faint sound of his recorded voice filled the room. "This is Captain Elias Ward of Earth Fleet. Requesting emergency landing." The room fell silent. One girl whispered, "That's human language." Rhea nodded. "Yes, the myths are true. Humans existed, they still do. This man is one of them." Elias stepped forward, pulling back his hood. Gasps echoed around the room. His eyes met theirs. Cautious, tired, but full of something powerful. "I don't know what your council told you," he said slowly, his voice steady. "But my people once fought yours. And lost. Yet we didn't vanish. We slept, waiting for the day we could wake and make peace." Taran looked shaken. "If the council hears this, they already know," Rhea interrupted. "That's why they're hunting us. They fear the truth. But if enough of us believe it, they can't stop it." The young rebels exchanged uneasy looks. Then Taran leaned closer. "You're saying we start a rebellion?" Rhea's voice didn't waver. "Not with guns. With truth." Hours later, the message began to spread through the lower districts, whispered from one person to another, carried through secret frequencies. Humans are real. The myths are lies. The council hides the truth. At first, the council dismissed it as rumor. But soon entire sectors refused to report for duty. Drone patrols went missing. Symbols of the old human fleet appeared painted on walls, the circle with wings. By the fourth night, the city was no longer silent. The rebellion had begun. From their hideout, Rhea watched the chaos unfold on stolen feeds. Citizens filled the streets. Security forces clashed with crowds chanting words she had never heard spoken aloud before. Freedom, humanity, truth. Elias stood beside her, his face shadowed by the dim light. "You've started something they can't control now." She looked at him. "We started it," he smiled faintly. "You gave them hope. I only reminded them what it looks like." Outside, thunder rolled, but it wasn't from the weather. The Council's warships had risen above the city. The skyline glowed red from the blasts. Terran burst into the room, out of breath. "They're attacking anyone who refuses orders. The upper districts are burning." Rhea turned to Elias. "We must end this before they destroy everything." He nodded slowly. "Then we need to show them proof, something they can't deny." Rhea thought for a moment, then her eyes widened. "The Central Archives. All ancient war records are stored there, hidden by the Council. If we broadcast them, everyone will see what really happened." Terran's expression darkened. "It's suicide. The archives are deep inside the Council Tower. No one gets in." Elias stepped forward. "Then it's time someone did." Rhea looked at him. A human surrounded by aliens, a relic of the past standing in the heart of rebellion, and felt something shift in her chest again. Not fear, faith. She placed her hand on his arm. "We go together." Terran exhaled sharply, then nodded. "We'll create a distraction. You get to the tower." The city burned through the night. Red flames danced against the frozen skyline. Sirens screamed. Drones roared, and the people rose. Amid the chaos, Rhea and Elias moved through the underground tunnels toward the tower. The ground trembled above them. Rhea could hear distant shouting, the sound of her people breaking their chains one scream at a time. When they reached the last door, Elias paused. "If we fail," Rhea interrupted, her eyes fierce. "Then at least we tried." He nodded, a small smile tugging at his lips. "You sound like a human," she smirked. "Maybe I finally understand one." The door opened, revealing the shimmering lights of the central tower rising above them, tall, cold, and full of lies waiting to be shattered. As they stepped inside the forbidden heart of the city, the revolution outside roared louder. The storm of truth no longer contained, and for the first time in centuries, the myth was fighting back. The wind screamed outside the shattered spires of Vereen Prime as smoke and light filled the sky. Fires glowed like veins of gold across the frozen city. The Council Tower, the tallest building in the system, rose in the center, wrapped in flickering blue shields and guarded by fleets of drones. Rhea stood at the base of that tower, her breath fogging the cold air. Her cloak was torn, her armor scorched, but her eyes still burned bright. Beside her, Elias Ward gripped a plasma rifle salvaged from the ruins. His face was tired, scarred with ash, yet calm. "This is it," he said quietly. "The heart of the lie." Rhea nodded. "Then we cut it open." They entered through a maintenance shaft, moving fast and silent through the dark tunnels. Sparks rained down from broken conduits. Far above, the sounds of war echoed, rebels shouting, ships firing, alarms wailing across the city. Rhea's wrist beacon pulsed, guiding them to the Central Archives, a massive chamber beneath the Council's throne room. It was said to contain every truth the Council had ever buried. When they reached the door, it stood sealed by a barrier of blue energy. Rhea's fingers danced across the control pad, trying to override the lock. "Council code. Encrypted," she muttered. Elias stepped closer, examining the console. "Let me try." She raised an eyebrow. "You know Valorian tech?" He smiled faintly. "It was human once. Your people just added prettier buttons." He connected a wire from his suit's datapad and began typing quickly. Rhea watched in quiet amazement as the screen glitched and flickered, then the barrier dropped. With a soft hum, "Still got it," he said with a grin. Rhea allowed herself a small laugh. The sound was rare in this world of steel and snow. "You really are a myth." Inside, the archives stretched endlessly, rows upon rows of glowing data pillars rising into the darkness. Each one contained a fragment of history, battles, treaties, and erased truths. Rhea felt her chest tighten as she walked among them. "This is what they feared," she whispered. "Memory." Elias began scanning files. "They didn't erase humans," he said softly. "They rewrote us." He brought up an old holo recording, grainy and dim. A human fleet appeared, not as conquerors but as explorers. They were shown offering peace to the Valorians. Before the Council turned on them, Rhea covered her mouth, tears stinging her eyes. "All this time, they lied." Elias placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Then let's show your people the truth." She nodded. Together they began uploading the data into the broadcast core, a massive device that connected to every communication tower in the system. But before the upload could complete, the room shook. A deep mechanical voice filled the air. Unauthorized access detected. Security forces inbound. Rhea looked up. Metal shutters began to close around the chamber. Drones swarmed through the ceiling vents, their red eyes glowing like fireflies of death. Elias raised his rifle. "I'll hold them off. Finish the upload." "No," Rhea shouted. "You can't." "Rhea," he said firmly, eyes locked on hers. "You woke me up for a reason. Let me finish what my people started." Her throat tightened. She wanted to stop him, but she saw the resolve in his eyes, the same fierce determination she had seen in the legends. She turned to the console, hands flying across the keys. Behind her, plasma fire roared. The air filled with the sound of explosions and Elias's battle cries. Drones fell one by one, but more came, their wings slicing the air. Come on, Rhea whispered as the progress bar climbed. 72%, 83%, 94%. Then the console sparked. A drone's blast struck the power core. The screen went black. "No," she cried. Elias stumbled, smoke rising from his armor. "Can you fix it?" Rhea tore open a panel. "I can reroute, but it needs more energy." He glanced at the central core, glowing faintly. "What if it had a direct feed?" She froze. "It would overload and kill the one who links it." Elias smiled weakly. "Then I guess it's my turn." Before she could stop him, he pressed his hand to the main core. Sparks burst across his body as the current flowed through him. The console flared to life again. 98%, 99%, 100%. The broadcast went out. Across Vereen Prime, across every colony and ship, holograms flickered to life. The truth filled the skies. Images of humans and Valorians standing side by side. Old peace treaties. The betrayal of the Council. Crowds stopped fighting. Soldiers lowered their weapons. The lie was broken. Rhea turned back to Elias. He was on his knees, eyes glowing faintly from the energy surge. She caught him before he fell. "You did it," she whispered. "They know the truth now." He smiled faintly. "Then maybe my people weren't forgotten after all." Rhea's tears fell onto his hand. "You can't die here, Elias, not after everything." He looked at her, his voice barely a whisper. "We never die, not if someone remembers." And then his eyes closed. Outside, the council tower burned. The people of Vereen filled the streets, chanting a single word: humanity. For the first time in centuries, it was not a curse. It was a promise. Rhea stood at the top of the tower watching the twin suns rise. She held Elias's insignia, the emblem of Earth Fleet, close to her chest. The wind carried voices from below, and for the first time she heard no fear in them. "Only hope," she whispered to the sky, her golden eyes shimmering. "You're free now. Both our worlds are." Above her, through the thinning clouds, a faint signal pulsed across the stars, the same frequency from the Odyssey. A voice whispered back, distant but clear. "Odyssey, we hear you." Rhea smiled through her tears. The myth had returned, not as conquerors, but as light reborn from darkness. And as the sun rose over a world finally awake, she whispered the words that would echo through history. The myth was real all along,